Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We have a busy, very busy week ahead of us as the NHL draft. Well, the NHL awards start tonight. The NHL draft is Wednesday and Thursday. We're all heading to Nashville. I'm not bringing my boots, Russ. I don't have boots.
I don't have boots anymore to bring. So
yeah, I'm hoping
hiking boots, but I'm not carrying those heavy things with me.
I'm hoping to find a honky tonk that plays progressive rock, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But anyway, let's start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
So let's talk about the second worst team money could buy. There was a book that came out in 1993 about the worst team money could buy, and that was the New York Mets. And they had guys like Brett Saberhagen and Vince Coleman, and they were, squirting bleach at fans, and they were doing all kinds of bad things.
How nice.
This year's Mets are not doing that. They're just bad. And it just shows you that you could have money, you could hire certain coaches and whatever, and it might not work out. And so, as an example, I was not a fan of Buck Showalter. Why? Not just because he never won, Kev, because I saw how he would crumble under pressure. And I never liked that. And for the last 2 weeks, while the Mets have been crumbling under pressure, so is he. And he has had many, many mistakes. One good one for Anthony yesterday in the Met game, letting David Robertson just kind of sit in the bullpen while one of the, I would say, more recent bullpen acquisitions was just hitting people.
Now playing the role of Zach Britton is David Robertson.
Yeah, but he did, similarly to the 76ers, Stephen Cohen did get fooled by the GM, Billy Epler, who sold him on the word sustainability. And sustainability is great, except in baseball, I think we all know that to build up a farm system could take a decade. And the Mets farm system was pretty depleted to the point where Brody Van Wagenen had traded Pete Crow Armstrong a couple of years ago for Robinson Cano. No, that wasn't the Cano deal. That was
that was the Kelnick deal.
Kelnick. Yeah, I was going to say Kelnick. That was for Diaz. I think you're right. That was for Diaz.
It wasn't a deal. Yeah.
All right.
Of course, no, he's not Chicago. No, it was somebody else. I forget who it was. But whoever he traded for him, it's fine because now Crow Armstrong's like one of the better rookies out, second-year players in the league. So these are the kinds of things that the Mets have gone through. And yes, so this plan of sustainability, probably
it was hobby bias.
Thank you. That lasted a year.
Yeah.
So the plan of sustainability is great if you're going to be a GM there for the next 5 years, but Billy Epler won't be. Unless he lands Shohei Ohtani, he's going to get fired, and Buck Showalter is going to get fired. And it just shows you could have two $40 million pitchers, but they're on the back nine. Now, Scherzer's got a little more than Verlander at the moment, but this is a sport where spending money matters. You still got to spend it the right way and still got to hire the right people, and that's what Stephen Cohen's learning.
Spending money matters, but spending money on maybe the right players and having the luck of those players staying healthy. Jacob deGrom signs with Texas. He blows out his arm. He may never pitch again now, supposedly.
Yep.
Carlos Rodon, Kev signs with the Yankees. It's June 26th. He hasn't thrown an inning in the major leagues yet. So it's like, Aaron Judge signs the 9-year deal. He breaks his toe on the concrete at Dodger Stadium. He's been out for over a month. And the one thing I could say is the Yankees have kept their head above water. A guy like Billy McKinney is hitting .320, but that's not who they signed up for. People going to Yankee Stadium didn't come to see Billy McKinney and Willie Calhoun. They came to see Aaron Judge and Carlos Rodon. But the injury situation is the great equalizer.
Yeah, that's out of anybody's control. But the one thing about the Mets, Russ, that like I'm such a baseball fan, is that I could still watch a bad team.
Oh, me too. I mean, I watch them every night.
Yeah, no, but I watch them and I enjoy them. It doesn't make me angry. But the point I was going to make is the one thing about the Tiger team that was really bad is they brought up a lot of younger players. With the Mets, you're just watching older players. Now, I think still watching Verlander and Scherzer is still a treat, just because you're watching two exceptional pitchers. They may not be the pitchers they were, but you're getting to see them. And, Scherzer's still a bulldog and Verlander's a bulldog. They still go at it. They compete pretty hard. But, Yeah, the Mets team would be less fun just simply because there's a lot of older players on that team, where you don't see it. Detroit has Torkelson. They've got, younger players that they're working into the lineup, Green, and so forth. So, you can kind of see the promise of the team. With the Mets, it's a little more challenging.
Yeah, they were supposed to compete and they're not. All right, let's get started. There's a lot of stuff going on. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, June 26th, 2023.
I'm Anthony Mangione.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund will be joining us any moment. We'll start with the trade that didn't happen, Anthony. The Philadelphia Flyers reportedly were going to make a blockbuster deal with the St. Louis Blues involving Travis Sanheim, primarily Kevin Hayes, a first-round pick coming back, and Torrey Krug. But Torrey Krug put the kibosh on it because he won't waive his no-trade clause. And
now, for sure. For now, that is true. Yes.
Right. Now, from the reporting from Pierre LeBrun and Elliot Friedman, it doesn't sound like he's going to. There's been overtures trying to get him to waive or maybe promising him that he'll get traded someplace else. He's got a full no trade. And then there's talk that eventually Hayes will be traded to St. Louis anyway, but it doesn't sound like this big is ever going to happen. So we'll start with you, Anthony, and then go to Kevin.
Yeah, so at the moment, the deal is currently in, basically in suspended animation for lack of a better word, for determining of whether or not they're going to defrost it at any point, if we're using science fiction terms. It is where it is right now. I mean, that's the key for Philadelphia right now, is that they are, waiting. And again, to me, it seems like Krug, and rightfully so, Torrey Krug has had this built into his contract and has every right to exercise it. Now,
he really wanted to go there too. That's important to notice. Like that, he really wanted to go there. Remember, he could have gone, that's where he wanted to be.
St. Louis, really wanted to go.
He wanted to go to St. Louis.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't blame him for like his kids and all. It's just a weird spot to be in.
It's a very difficult spot to be in, and again, this is a power that he has in his contract, and he has absolutely every right to exercise that right. Even if for the Flyers, it is, a difficult thing for them because this was a case where, based on reports, obviously they're going to be looking at retention on multiple deals here that they potentially are looking at right now. We also have obviously the Tony DeAngelo deal that currently is also kind of being held in suspended animation.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that shortly, but yeah, again, in this circumstance, I think at the end of the day, we all objectively I know Kevin Weeks had reported, obviously, that I think one of the key parts of this deal, of course, is the late first round pick that has been discussed, whether it's 25 or 29. And that's to get Philadelphia to either have that back end first round pick or use it as a chip to get for somebody who really wants to move up, for them to get into the second round of this draft to spread things out certainly accordingly. So I think that's the ultimate objective here for Danny Briere, is to kind of clear the deck with some retention in this circumstance and continue within this rebuild. But it's obviously being, in this circumstance, it's currently being held up, and we'll see what potential other directions they may go in, whether Torrey Krug changes his mind or the Flyers are able to come up with a trade partner to send him to that he would be amenable to.
Right.
That's all speculation at this point.
Well, Kev, I'm sorry, Zach, I'll let you take control here. The interesting thing here, Kev, because there's talk about Krug doesn't want to go to Philadelphia, but he would go to Detroit because he's a Michigan native. I know David Pasternak retweeted something from a Bruins fan about trading Krug back to Boston and retweeted it. So obviously they would love to have him back in Boston, but the $6.5 million cap hit is something they can't handle. Well, what have you heard in regards to Detroit and Krug?
Well, the only thing about the Detroit situation is that, and Steve Eisenman, unrelated to this, said less than a week ago, he was talking about the idea of picking the best available athlete or player as opposed to picking for position. And he said, for example, and the reason he does that is because you never know what your roster will look like from year to year. And he said, last year we were short on left shooting defensemen. He goes, and now it's the strength of our team. So, and if that's the case, I don't see them adding in an expensive player. And the other thing I'd bring up is kind of funny, but I don't know who said it, but there was a joke running around on why the Red Wings didn't make a serious bid to get Torrey Krug when he was a free agent. And the story is that somebody within the organization is, why should we go after a guy who's willing to come our team? Like, we're so bad. Like, right now, like, why does he want to come here? We want guys that want to win, So anyway, I mean, it was a joke, but it's certainly, I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of brought up, that he just kind of wanted to go home as opposed to trying to win. So I don't know. I think knowing his personality a little bit, I think it's going to be hard to convince him to change his mind. So
I've been doing a lot on this. Like, my connections in Philly have never been better. As far as people I know and in higher places, so I've been doing a lot of conversations, phone conversations back and forth and talking to people. Mm-hmm. The Krug thing it's just not going to happen. He's not coming to Philly, no way, shape or form. And it's really wasn't going to happen almost immediately. So by the time it came out, that he was refusing for now, he'd been refusing for days. And the other thing that was said, he not to be a jerk, but I actually heard this through the grapevine. It's like, why would I want to go? I'm an injury-prone defenseman. Why would I want to play for Tortorella? Where it's like, he's like, I'm going to be blocking hundreds of shots.
Well, no, that is absolutely a factor in consideration here.
I mean, think about that. Like, your Krug, he's been out and missed some time with injuries. He's going to go to a place that's going to make him play a certain style that's going to not help him stay healthy.
Right.
But and for what, that's not a good thing either. I don't think it wasn't a personal thing against Philly at all.
No, but it's accurate.
It was more like, hey, and I, you wonder about the coach, and coaches always do play a part in these free agencies or players wanting to come to places. There are Tortorella people. There are people who love Tortorella, and that's what the Flyers really should be looking at, finding those people out there that love Tortorella because they'll play for him. Now,
the other, I want to ask you about this. The other aspect of this deal. I mean, I understand the Kevin Hayes thing. They want to get out of the last 3 years of Kevin Hayes' deal. It's not a fit with Tortorella, and I guess Krug would be the salary coming back to make that possible. The interesting part of this is the Sanheim part, because he's got a no trade that kicks in on July 1.
Yeah.
They're trying to do the old JVR, Jeff Carter, Mike Richards thing of trading the guy before the trade clause.
Right. Well, he's been on my rumor chart for months, as you guys know.
I know. And then that's why I'm asking this. It's like, I understand there's a switch in management. It went from Chuck Fletcher to Daniel Briere, but to go from a guy that we're going to sign for 8 years at $6.25 to now we want to get rid of this guy is a pretty good shift in terms of their thought process on Sanheim after a few months.
Yeah, you could say that, but you could say that, but at the same time, with the management change. Sorry.
Right, the management change. We also have taken into account one thing here. We're going to hear a lot of Flyers rumors right now. Why are we going to hear a lot of Flyers rumors? Well, we haven't heard many Flyers rumors from like the mainstream media for not a long time. Like Fletcher wasn't like notoriously going after people, or and you wouldn't hear his Flyers being interested. When I did some inquiry into like Carter Hart and like with whether that was serious or not, I was told by the forces to be, it's like it might not be that serious, but I don't mind talking to people. I don't mind. I'm a new. Maybe there's maybe new GMs and new presidents of teams like Jones and Briere want to start making relationships with general managers. You're going to have more conversations out there all the time. These are guys who haven't been a GM before. And Briere's got to get out there. And a lot of people have been to Briere. Yeah, he was great. He was a great player in the playoffs. But what is he going to do as a general manager? He's a smart guy. Once you actually sit down and talk to him, you realize that he's an intelligent hockey guy for sure. But a lot of people just have that, what I always say in the hockey world is that one sentence on him, and every player has a one sentence, and one sentence on Briere is like, he's a great playoff performer. But no one thinks of him as executive. So I think Briere, you're going to see more and more rumors fly out there, because I think every time a rumor goes out there and like suddenly Connectly's available or something like that, suddenly Connectly
or Lawton or something
like that happens. 5 other teams will call about Connectly. 5 other teams will call about Lawton. You know what I mean? And then you're starting conversations, you're starting relationships, you're developing things. And I think that's something that really can't be understated here, as to way more rumors than what the Flyers will actually do, I believe is going to be the case. They now that I want to understand with the Carolina thing.
Well, hold on. Before we go to Carolina, you had mentioned something that I think is difficult to pull off. And this is not Danny Briere's fault. This is the Flyers' fault. To find players that want to play for Torts and teams that want Kevin Hayes, there's not a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that's not. I mean, there's basically from how I've been reading it from conversations, and this wasn't like told to me directly, but this is what the gist if I would get, because different GMs are different. I've been trying to figure out what kind of GM this is, There's 3 different kinds of trades at work here, right? There's 3 different kinds of possibilities at work here. And the one is like, let's get rid of Hayes. Let's get rid of D'Angelo. Let's get rid of big contracts, eat money, and just start new because those guys are around here. They're hanging in the locker room. This is a lot like the Bill Guerin method of getting rid of people. You're going to pay a price for it for sure, but you're going to create a new atmosphere, right? That's definitely the atmosphere is a big word right now around the Flyers. Atmosphere is a big thing. Culture, atmosphere, and it should be because this team has lost that. Which was at one time one of their biggest strongholds. One time this was the best culture in the city for any team for a long time, and now it's not at all. What I mean? That's been an issue. So, and then there's the trades where they're trying to go out and actually do something, like they're trying to get some players, right?
Well, I want Russ to bring up what he heard from Keith Jones because I want to talk about that.
I didn't hear it. It was reported on Twitter.
Okay, so but it was reported that
I shared the tweet. That's all I did. Okay. So I'm not going to say.
And it was said that Keith Jones was out there talking about the rebuild not being, it
was in context. The question was, so here it was, I did get it. And it was basically are we waiting until 2028 for this thing to be turned around?
Right.
I think that was the question asked by the morning show host from WIP is that. And I think that's the context of the response.
What did Jonesy say? I didn't even hear this one.
He said it's going to be faster than that. And asked about 2028, which is 5 years away, is asinine. But I'll say this. If you're going to go through the rebuild and you're going to trade players like Hayes, and you're talking about trading players like Sanheim, and you're going to trade Konechny, don't go out and promise that the rebuild is going to be fast. If you're going to do a proper rebuild, it's going to take 3-4 years of reorganizing, getting prospects in your
26 then you're talking, right? Yeah, so I mean, and that's that within that context.
You may not know. No, that's the whole thing.
No, I mean you might not know.
Here's the answer that I would give. It'll take as long as it takes.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
But it will, but that may not may or may not play with that's not going to play with the
but I'm not going to all of a sudden try and like put the carrot a little closer by saying
I don't get the impression here that Jones is intending to. Yeah. I think it was given as an extreme circumstance. You're talking a 5-year window.
They're not in a position where they want to put out there that they're not going to be good.
Hold on. The only thing that's definite here is he doesn't think it's going to take until 2028. And you know what? Tell the Sabres that there's at least 6 other teams.
Red Wings. Yeah, Senators.
If you're trying to get people in, to get people into there, I don't think what he said here was necessarily completely out of turn.
Yeah, from my perspective,
he was given an extreme 5-year window, and he says, "I don't think it'll take." Did he give a specific date?
No.
He didn't.
He doesn't think it'll take that long. So now he's kind of saying, "Don't worry, like by 2027."
There's a huge specific difference that Briere's doing that no other GM that I've covered in Philly has done. And there's one thing he's doing that nobody else has done. And that the other day a name came up that he was in, that I thought I heard he might be interested in, or they might be interested in. And it was a relatively like a 28-year-old, pretty good player, 29, but like just, and this is a player the Flyers definitely would have been interested in before. Like this is a guy that they definitely, and it fits their needs that they have right now. And that's the first time ever a Flyers person has said, we're not ready for him yet. And that's an interesting thing to respond to because that tells you right there that this is a guy that you would get if you were a playoff team trying to take the next step, or you're distant, or you're trying to you're just a bubble team trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and if
it tells you that they know that they're not ready for those to pick up those guys yet.
Right. If it's a 23-year-old that you can hold on for 3 or 4 years, then that makes sense. But
Flyers have never done this though. Like this is a brand new. Other teams have said this kind of thing to me, but I've never.
They've never really been in this position though. Actually.
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, they have bottomed out. They bottomed out, but they had a unique opportunity to be able to snap back quickly when they had their, obviously the rough year in the mid 2000s.
Well, look at what Fletcher left in Minnesota. Like, look at what Fletcher left in Minnesota. That's pretty important to look at here because Fletcher's Minnesota, what he left in Minnesota, what Guerin came in to take over, and and same kind of mistakes are what Briere's got to kind of erase. Not completely, but similar situations.
Not as bad as Minnesota because you don't have $14 million in dead cap money because you had to buy out.
Yeah, but Minnesota was still an okay team. Yeah,
So
their issues were not the same.
They didn't let it go as far as the Flyers let it go.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I'd say is that, what's kind of lost, first of all, I think fan bases have a general idea now that with the 32-team league, it's hard to rebuild through the draft, and it takes time. Like, I think by all accounts, Steve Yzerman has done extremely well in his first-round picks, and there's 7 years without making the playoffs. Like, Steve Yzerman has said right from the beginning pretty much what Russ said, and that is it will take as long as it takes. Like, I'm not going to promise you. And what he says now is, I feel we're getting there, but will we make the playoffs next year? I got no idea. Like, he says that all the time. He's not afraid to say that, and I think that's the way to go. You're just honest with your fan base. Like,
They're very specific, Kevin. You're exactly right. Yeah. You're exactly right what you're saying. And they have very specific diamonds in the rough that they're thinking about right now, and that they think they can get that no one else is going to kind of ignore. And a lot of that comes from an interesting twist of which we haven't seen before, which is your team president has stood between benches on many occasions, watching players at the ice level and how they interact with their teammates on the bench, and he's seen the character of some guys at a deeper, like Jones, by being in that position for a very long time, has definitely picked up on some guys that he thinks are being ignored, or some guys he thinks are better team people than you would expect them to be. And I think that's where Jones is going to play a major role in this, because that is a really unique position to be in. Like to be sitting there. Because he hears conversations, he hears people going back and forth on both benches all the time. And as an analyst, he would bring up some good things sometimes. He said, this guy just said this, or this guy's trying to rally his troops or whatever. You'd hear those kind of things from him. I think you're going to see that with the Flyers.
Now the interesting thing about
Kevin,
I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say I agree with you on that. I think and being, just being an analyst, like he was one of the better analysts in terms of actually kind of understanding the inside. He did his homework. Some analysts just basically watch the game and then, rely on, like Mark Messier's that way. I mean, Mark Messier's not calling and talking to players and doing those kind of things. Well, Keith did do that. So he did all of his homework. And I think that will, kind of serve him well. The issue is, though, is I think no matter what they do, it's like imperative that, they add first round picks, especially this year where the draft is very deep, and even late like that, they might get a player that'll be significant because it just takes forever. Through the draft.
Depending how good their scouting staff is and who they pick and how they develop them.
But I think these key players I'm talking about here, to finish this train of thought here, is that the kind of players I'm talking about are the kind of players that have kept Buffalo, Detroit, and slowed down Edmonton's progress. I'm talking about like the bottom six guys who have that those teams have always needed, but never found the right ones. You know what I mean? That's to me, there've been stars in those places, but it's taken them longer because they haven't filled out the rosters with like the key late second, third, fourth liners. And those are the kind like what Jones has beyond the fact he's incredibly hardworking, like you say, Kevin. He does a hell of a lot of research, and anybody who lives in Philly knows that we would see him on a television show, and then hear him at 5 a.m. We would watch a game and hear him at 5 a.m. on the radio. The next day, he was crazy, right? But he does have good bench instincts, like really good bench instincts. And even as a player on the bench, he was one of those guys who was like bigger on the bench than he was on the ice. Even like that's what he does, So I think that. It could be sped up a little bit by getting some of these star quality draft picks and filling those players in with some really good support players that are like, the guys that are getting $3 to $4 million a year, but are scoring at the rate of like $6 million.
Yeah, but the problem is getting those players to come into a rebuilding situation, and the Krug thing is proof that it's going to be tough to do that. Now, the interesting thing about the D'Angelo thing. Elliot Friedman reported this a couple hours ago, and this may jive with what you found out, Eck, is they can't trade him back to Carolina and retain his salary until 1 calendar year after the deal that sent him from Carolina to Philly. And that deal happened at the draft in Montreal in early July. So 1 calendar year, I think it is July 7th or July 8th. So
it should be draft to draft, but it's not. Like I was talking about something about this.
It's the contract too, and when it was, I think, filed. That's probably the biggest issue. I think the mistake here was, and this is just my speculation here, is they may have thought it was from the acquisition point, but again, they didn't have him under contract. It was reported at the draft of that they were going to sign him to a 2-year contract, but whatever it comes down to the filing.
Right. So
yeah, but you were talking a lot about
thing-
Carolina
the only
last year.
thing I
Like
would
they
say
did not want to
about-
let D'Angelo go away. Like they
Right.
actually did like D'Angelo, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The only thing
I
I
mean-
would say about this is Anthony's right, and they have other people in the front office like a capologist and otherwise who should know this. And this and for me, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence when you all of a sudden hear that this trade's like minutes from happening, and all they have to do is decide on.
Said it was going to be minutes from happening. They were talking about it was going to be filed the next day, but it was also based off
next
of.
day. So
But I think whatever the cap situation was that it was going to happen not separately, but along after what happened.
maybe
nobody
they
wrote
they got
that.
it. That
Nobody
obviously
was talking about that. Nobody wrote that. It was
Maybe
either
they
going to be
reported-
that day or the next day, and now
maybe
we
they
find
reported
out
it to the league,
July 8th.
Russ. Maybe they reported it to the league, and the league said you can't do this because of this.
Well,
did
yeah,
not.
But
Okay.
like who cares? Like if they've made the trade and they'll wait. I mean, Mike
that
Babcock.
was my point. That
Yeah,
was my
I mean,
point,
like,
Kevin.
not-
It was like,
not any
okay, wait till
big
July
deal.
8th then.
As long
a
as
non-
everybody agrees to the trade, that
Right.
you know,
If there's
they'll
a
just
now,
wait
if there's
it
a
out.
if there was a 2023 pick involved here,
Right.
then
Yeah.
then in that case, I agree. I make it's much more of an issue.
It's not.
It's very
Yeah.
obvious at this point that a 2023 pick is not involved. It's a low level problem, and it's already been reported a lower level
Right.
prospect.
Right, but Kevin does make a good point. You do have to hope in another week they still want to do it. They might
Give
do
me,
something
give me
else.
give me a
No,
dollar.
that was the point I made to you that
Oh, I thought
earlier.
you did.
Yeah,
So
no,
give me
yeah,
a dollar.
that they still want to do it, but I think there's an agreement here in this case that they're
Give
gonna
me
do
a
it.
dollar for every NBA trade that's reported that it happens up about 3 weeks after the fact. They just have to wait till some clause or something,
Yeah.
that happens. So yeah, I think he eventually is going to end up back in Carolina.
Yeah.
But Russ is right. If it's not officially filed in the NHL, Don Waddell could say, "I don't want him anymore."
Kevin,
Yeah,
quick,
they
quick
could,
text
but you
right now.
know, why would they do that? I mean, you know,
That's the thing. If they do it, then that's why then you're it.
Maybe a better deal comes
People
along.
It better
trust
comes
Don
along,
Waddell.
but
Don Waddell's a
but it
trustworthy
puts
guy. People like Don Waddell's not like if this was McCrimmon in Vegas, people might be a little bit nervous about this kind of thing, but
depends on each individual general manager.
it does,
in
and
case of
even
what
though
they're-
there's no
how they're
relationship,
operating.
people just in general trust Waddell.
Well,
Those guys.
Ack,
But
I'm glad-
there's an interesting thing I got, Kevin. I just got this text just now.
Yeah.
About the Krug thing, and I was wondering this too because I've over the years, since I've been a rumor person before Twitter was out and all this stuff. That's what I've always done has been rumors. I have been extremely careful not to put out players' names that are involved in trades until it's pretty much done. If I know a trade's about to happen or something like that, or if I do put them out, I don't put them out as definites. Like there are some people like this Krug thing. The NHLPA hates this. There's nothing worse than like Krug now, like being told, like it getting publicly out there that Krug
being
is
the bad guy. Yeah.
and it puts him in a really weird spot. And I don't know where it came
Well, it
out.
was reporters' product of deduction. I don't think anybody had sort of said anything with regards to who the defenseman was. But once you started digging into who's got the who's got the no trade clauses, and you whittle those things down, it then became obvious who that player was.
Anthony, all 4 of their top defensemen.
I know I'm well aware of that, Mike.
Yeah,
This is the only one that would make sense. So I get that at the
Right.
same time, but even that is like if through the power of reduction you can come to a name like this, I don't know. I guess Twitter has killed this, but before I didn't used to put these things out. Like I would keep them out, But I guess now you're just allowed to put out anything, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think by now that players understand the full ramifications of no trade clause, including the fact that they could be vilified?
Sure.
No,
they know that, but also, don't you think by now, like journalists, like a lot of where I got to at this time of day was by building trust relationships with guys like this. Like by building with the players, and you too. Like you build a relationship that they know they can talk to you, and it's not going to come out. So this is like the kind of thing that I would never have done just for that reason, selfish reason alone. That I don't want to screw Krug. One, I don't want him to be put in that position where he's got to do this, but also I want him continue to be a friend of mine as we move forward. And him know I knew the information, but didn't put it out is way more valuable than than throwing him under the bus.
But heck, this is old hat. I mean, remember the Muskoka Five. You remember the 5 players who wouldn't waive their no trade clauses when I mean, they were completely shamed. And in the case of Matt Sundin, I think deservedly so. But the other ones were shamed because they wouldn't waive. Now it wasn't their fault. It was John Ferguson Jr. who gave 5 players.
That's the end of the day. Yeah, you chose to give those contracts at the time. I mean, that was the danger of it.
You're absolutely right in terms of that. You're in a difficult spot. On the other hand, I mean, this is a pretty big event for fan bases. This is actual big news. We thought this deal was going to happen. It didn't happen. Why?
No, once we know it, like we have, if you actually know it like this, I get why people would put it out there, because once it's out there, it's out there. Well, but if you're the only person who knows it, that's a different situation. I mean,
then you're naive to think you're the only person who knows.
Well, it depends on how you got it. I mean,
it depends how close you are with the player or the agent or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy cut a deal with you and said you can't use this even on background, well, then you can't use it.
Right, and you don't, and that happens a lot. So,
and if you needed an example of an NBA trade in the NHL, the Ryan Johansson deal was the prototypical NBA trade.
Yep.
Traded him for an expiring contract in Alex Galchenyuk, retained 50%, and now Nashville's not going to sign Galchenyuk. So you gave away Ryan Johansson because you wanted to clear at least some of his $8 million. You cleared 4 of it for the next 2 years. If you bought him out, I think it was a $2.7 million cap hit for 4 years. So
brilliant move by Trotz, by the way.
Yeah, no, I mean,
not bad move for Colorado either.
Exactly.
No,
he could play Colorado. He could still play enough to help you at $4 million.
Yeah.
It's like Ken Holland used to say, "I hate him at $8 million, but I love him at 4."
Right.
So that's an answer in this. So
he's going to be your JT Compher replacement for Colorado. I can't see them signing Compher.
Now Comfort's going to be again in a very threadbare UFA market. Comfort suddenly becomes a very interesting potential ad for teams who are going to overpay probably.
I have another general point that I'd like to put out there for everybody to discuss. Okay, that this is we are going to see like the overall feeling I've gotten is that. And everybody has this thing that the Matthew Tkachuk saga that went through last year, where Matthew Tkachuk went to Calgary and respectfully said, "I'm not going to sign here again.
No,
please try to trade me now," is happening a lot more in the NHL than it's ever happened.
Yes.
Players are now comfortable doing this. It was something that players weren't comfortable doing for a very long time. Now players are actually comfortable doing it, which is great because it's good for us. It's good, puts things out there. But because
of the teams too, I mean,
it's really good for everybody, except for maybe when it gets out there, the player does it. If it gets out there, the player did it, then and he doesn't get traded, then the player's stuck in a spot where the fans are going to boo him. But besides that, but the bigger thing is this has caused a bit of a surplus of tradable players right now.
Oh, yeah.
And what's happening because of that is no one is willing to give up a lot for anybody at this point, because there's a real belief that their prices are going to come down because of just the number of players out there, right?
Well, okay.
Isn't that, Kevin? Are you feeling the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. But I did want to add to that a little bit too. Also, I've heard this from 2 general managers who said that if you're looking for a difference-making player, the free agent market is not for you.
Right.
So you've convinced yourself that you're going to have to go to the trade market to get that guy. So there's 2 different kind of pressures there too. So on one hand, they want the market to go down because there are a lot of guys available in trade. On the other hand, they won't be able to get that guy they want. You can get, as one said to me, you can get a player. And, maybe a guy that'll help you, but you can't get those difference makers. They're available in the trade market.
Yeah.
Right. But then, Kev, this is the dilemma for these general managers out there. Like, let's use the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation as an example. There's talk about him going to LA. There's also talk about him going to Montreal. He's an RFA. He's got all the control. He could sign a 1-year deal and walk to unrestricted free agency, but whoever's trading for him and giving up significant assets is going to want him on a long-term deal. If you look at the rumors regarding him going to LA, supposedly it's Gabe Velarde and Alex Iafallo, 2 pretty decent players, and that would help Winnipeg out. But if you're only getting them for 1 year, nobody wants to give up those prospects. It's all conditional on these players signing long-term deals and these teams getting a long-term commitment. And some of these players don't want to do it.
There are a ton of teams talking to the agents right now for other players. We haven't heard about it, but there's a lot of it.
There's players. I think the one thing you're forgetting, Mike, is there's a group of teams that want to get the player long term, and there's another group that want them for 1 year.
Right.
And the offers reflect that. So I mentioned what particular player who has 1 year left, and he said, we're very interested, but we're telling them right up front, we want 1 year out of you.
Right.
They're just buying a much longer rental the way they're viewing it.
I heard that with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Dallas, for example. Dallas is a team that could go take on Pierre-Luc Dubois for 1 year. He could look at it like, okay, I'm going to go to a team that's in a Stanley Cup contender, and I'm going to go there, and in my 1 year, I could raise my level highly because I could have a successful playoff run. And now, after that 1 year, I could go anywhere. Dallas could look at it like, okay, we'll take it for 1 year as a trade deadline that we do at the beginning, the trade deadline pickup that we do at the beginning of the season, right? Essentially, that's how they would look at it. So I think you're right, Cam. I think you're going to see both of those scenarios.
But the thing, okay, and Noah Hannafin is another one. I'm sure there are a lot of teams out there that would like Noah Hannafin and like him for 1 year. He's only 26 years old, but I'm sure there are teams out there that want him for 8 years. The problem is, I've heard him being connected to Toronto, and Brad Treliving was the guy who traded for him from Carolina and likes him. Problem is, he's got an 8-team no trade list, and he doesn't want to play in Canada. So probably 7 of those 8 teams are the Canadian team, or 6 of those 8 teams are the Canadian team. So he's probably not going to go to Toronto.
Why? Yeah, you sound angry about that, Mike.
No.
I mean, that's just the reality of today's world.
I think the only team in Canada is perhaps with a shot with him is Toronto because of Treliving, because of it's a short-term deal.
Yeah.
The general feeling around is that he wants to play for the Bruins eventually.
Yeah. That's whether or not that's going to happen or not. I sound angry about everything, Kev. So that's
I agree, but you sound particularly angry about the guy just exercising his position to be in.
No. That's his right. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But I think there is a reality now that when these guys have no trades or no moves, and they decide that they don't want to be with that team anymore, they don't want to get traded for the 1 year. They only want to get traded if they're re-signing for long term. And that's the thing. Every team wants Hellebuck on 1 year or Hannafin for 1 year. Every team would want that, but the players don't want that.
Yeah. Ottawa got not nothing, but they didn't get the value for Mark Stone because they couldn't sign him, and he was going to Vegas. And then he turned right around and signed a $9.5 million 8-year deal with Vegas because he wanted to be there. But had they known that, they would have gotten a lot more in the trade.
Right. But on Hellebuck, by the way, I've heard that the reason we haven't seen a Timo Meier deal done yet is tied to the Hellebuck possibility, and they could ask Timo for a discount. Timo's like, only if you guys can get him, kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not. If you guys can't get him, then I want my full contract. If you guys can get him, maybe I give you a little bit back, and because he's,
Yeah. Well, but Russell's point is a good point, and we need to amplify that a little bit. There are far more players who want to have long-term contracts than contracts one. Like Eck just presented a scenario, which, that's out there. There are players who would rather play 1 year. Of course, in his case, he's thinking, okay, I'll go there for 1 year and then I'll go to Montreal.
Yeah. I'll tell you a team that wants the 1 year commitment. A team like Buffalo wants a defenseman to pair with Owen Power, but they don't want to sign somebody long-term because they're going to pay Power and they're going to pay Dahlin, and they can't afford another defenseman at $6 million. So they would love to get Pesce or love to get Hannafin for a year and then say, thank you for your service and enjoy free agency. But a lot of teams, and the Sabres have the young assets to say, okay, we'll go for that 1 year. But a lot of teams don't. Like Toronto is not going to trade Matthew Nyes to Calgary for Noah Hannafin and then let Noah Hannafin walk. They're going to want that long-term commitment, and he probably would not want to sign a long-term deal with Toronto. So that's where these teams.
When they trade Nyes to get him a long-term?
Yeah, they might. I think they shy away from it because Nyes is a unicorn for that team. He's a big forward, and they don't have many big forwards. I think they would hesitate, but if they could get Hannafin on a reasonable contract, they might think of it. But I don't think so.
Is it possible that people, and this is totally speculation, I'm just throwing it out there to get what you guys think about it, but if you're sitting around now and you're watching Pittsburgh and you see that they've gotten to this point where they've got nothing, I mean nothing coming, like zero. They don't, they're really, what you see with the Penguins is what you got. Yeah. They look at them and they're going, oh no. So like Toronto with Nyes, who thinking, I gotta save him because who knows how long we're going to be contending. Do you think that people are seeing that, or are they totally ignoring that?
Oh, I mean, okay, Kyle Dubas obviously sees it because he's talking about not buying out players, and obviously he's going to be focused on rebuilding that organization through the draft. And Hextall was starting to do that, but never really got the chance to fully realize that situation. But yeah, his situation is, and this is why I was a little scared for Kyle Dubas taking that job, is because you've got maybe a year, 2 years at most with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang before they.
But I'm not talking about the Penguins. Like I think Dubas went in with his eyes. I'm talking about the other teams. Are they looking at the Penguins? If you're the Boston Bruins, for example, are you looking at the Penguins and go, man, that could be us? If we don't,
they emptied the chamber. Listen, the deadline they emptied emptied the chamber, right?
Yeah,
I think it is. I mean, their talk is Krejci's not coming back. Okay, so, and he wasn't making that much. If Bergeron retires, which I think it's 50-50 right now, I mean, they have no centers. Their number one center is Charlie Coyle. So, I mean, they're there now if those guys retire.
I mean, it's almost like squirrel theory. I mean, you got to squirrel away some nuts for, up the road. I mean, you really do. Like, even if those guys are 3 years away, you put them away and you don't think about them,
the good thing that a team does there, Russ, is that these teams like that can let guys incubate for a lot longer. This is what Detroit used to do all the time, right, Kevin? It's like what they would do all the time. And so Russ, Russ is always saying you should have like 2 or 3 guys, like 2 or 3 years in the juniors or whatever.
Especially in college, or you get European players because you don't have to make quick decisions on them.
Yeah, although the problem with that, the Red Wings actually were criticized for, as Ken Holland used to say, I like them overripe. And the problem with that is once they would get up there, they'd have they'd watch them for a few games, then they have to make a decision on them because they were out of options.
That's too long.
Yeah, it's too long. So, there's probably a happy medium there. But I just for some reason just have a sense that you're going to see, teams like, I think that's Dubas's mandate in Pittsburgh. Is it's similar actually. People hate it when you compare him to Hextall, but Hextall was trying to do what ownership wanted, which is to win now. But he was also trying to, create some sort of prospect base so that, he would have a replenishing supply of, players. And that's hard to do. But I think Dubas is going to do that too.
Yes.
I think he's going to do it too. And I think Dubas was obviously when he came down and said he wasn't going to buy out guys, that part of his mandate getting hired.
No,
he's not buying out these guys. That basically was, you come in here, but you're not buying out. Like they knew there were certain things that Dubas can't do. I'm sure that's the case that, when he was brought in.
The other move that was curious was Aiden Hill getting signed for 2 years at almost $5 million AAV. And if you look at what's going on with Vegas, Brassois is a UFA, so he's probably gone. Mm-hmm. Quick is a UFA. He might retire. You never know. This tells me Robin Leonard's never playing again, or at least not playing the next year or so, because they wouldn't spend $5 million on Aiden Hill. They have Logan Thompson now, and there's your pairing, but they wouldn't spend almost $5 million on Aiden Hill if they weren't confident in either moving Leonard's deal or him never playing again.
Yeah, I think they're going to try and move his deal. I just don't think he'll play for them.
To me, it feels very much like they don't believe that Logan Thompson's coming back so soon. Like that, like they're worried about that because he's obviously their best goalie. Like he's their top goalie.
They said he was ready to. He was almost ready.
I know, but they're nervous about him. You know what I mean? They're definitely nervous about
it. They're hedging their bets. They only gave Hill 2 years, so that was smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing about that contract that's just stunned. I mean, it just stuns me for this reason. I remember during the playoffs when he was so hot. Readers of the Detroit Red Wing site that I write for, they were commenting that maybe because the Red Wings are looking for a goalie to play with Husso, they were commenting about signing him. And the thought was that you could probably get him for 5.5. And I thought that's just totally ludicrous for a guy who's never really been a starter. And now the reality is he got 4.9. Like that's pretty much 5.5. Like
it is.
But it is Vegas, and Vegas falls hard in love with guys. They really do.
I mean, I would have thought $3 million. You know what I mean? So
he was making 2. I thought he was going to 3.5, and he gets almost 5. I'm like, wow.
What if you got
they have to really like
$3 million a year?
They have to really like the way he, kind of fits that team. I think they stylistically, I think they felt like maybe they were they've played their strongest and they did. I mean, at the end of the day, they did. They played their strongest in front of him. So you put
he
that.
might be a flavor of the month, because Thompson was flavor of the month,
And he does have a character.
Good flavor.
It is
a good flavor, yeah.
but I think I you guys know my opinion. He's Robin Leonard 2.0 to me. Like I was not a Robin Leonard fan either, and they're the same kind of goalie to me. And that you're looking at the same.
The only difference, Zach, is you don't hear any issues with Aiden Hill getting into it with players or being.
Oh no, but no, just stylistically the way they play.
Snakes or anything.
I mean, they play the same. They play the same kind of way, and that's
we understand Leonard's issues, but still,
he is
not liked by all.
No, I'm not. This is not. Yeah, this is not.
No, we know.
This is just simply style. It's a style that I don't love in goaltenders myself. It's just like one of these. It's the overcommitting.
Too Cujo for your taste.
If he wins 2 cups, then what are you going to say over that? Like, I mean,
I'm sitting here doing a podcast. There's no like.
Now this is no great revelation. This is no great revelation when it comes to what's going to happen over the next week, Kev. But I would be shocked if we don't see a lot of these deals where players like Jake Muzzin, his career's over with, and he's a $5.6 million cap hit and on LTIR. If Toronto moves him out, or if Leonard gets moved out of Vegas, or all these injured, but because the cap room is so crippling right now, and there are a bunch of teams like Anaheim and now Nashville that are like $25-30 million under the cap, and they'd rather trade for a guy and get to the cap floor that way and not sign somebody to a long-term deal. So we're going to see a lot of those.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's going to be, that's going to be fun. I mean, I think seeing what Poyle managed to pull off with, getting rid of Johansson, which I didn't think he'd ever be able to do. And they needed to, because he was a real waste of time in Nashville. Like there's a few players that I would say that about, but he just really did not.
But he didn't fit Brunette's style of
and his style of any of the coaches they had there, honestly, because he didn't have any success there. But I mean, really, the smallest amounts of success. So to me, I love to see what he's going to do with all his cap space. Like I can't wait to see what Johnson's going to do with it.
Yeah,
they're not a bad team. The key players they have signed, remember they pushed it they pushed up almost a playoff spot. They're an interesting team.
They still need to score goals though.
Yeah, they do need to score. Well, you make an interesting point about that, and I think it didn't get enough attention, but David Poyle couldn't have made that deal because Nashville, and I know this is the case, Nashville ownership has not been happy since the Kyle Turris deal about buyouts. I mean, they're still paying on that Kyle Turris deal, and it's more than $2 million. But Barry Trotz is in his honeymoon period, so he could go and say, "Look, let's retain because it's not as bad as a buyout," and I'm sure he's convincing him of that. But they're retaining salary for the rest of his contract, and that's hard to do. I mean, I've had GM say to me that you guys just dismiss it like it's real easy to walk into an owner's office and say, I want you to eat $2.5 million.
Well, you didn't sign him if you weren't the guy signing him.
Yeah. So
in any business, you go to and say, I need you to eat this, and it's like,
what? I don't think David could do that because he was the Kyle Turris.
And he's the guy who signed it.
Because Trotz is on his honeymoon.
Well, the interesting one, and I don't think anybody's heard his name mentioned in terms of trade or buyout when it comes to Nashville, was Ryan McDonough. And, now he's got I just looked it up. He's got a modified no trade. He's got 3 years left at 6.75. I don't know if anybody's taking him at that amount. They would probably have to eat,
so.
They'd probably have to eat half of that one.
I guarantee you he's not even close to what they consider their biggest problem.
Yeah.
Not even anywhere near their biggest problem.
I think there'll still be value out there. Or interested
Duchesne, right? The biggest problem is Duchesne.
No, but he can still play to a degree. He's just not himself. So I think what Kevin's saying is true. He's not a problem on the ice. He's just not what he is.
I don't think they're worried about his salary. That's what I was saying right
I think
now.
he's a good teaching guy to have around too.
Yeah, I mean all the above. I mean, would they wish he was $3 million cheaper? Yeah, but
Duchesne fits what Brunette, the style that Brunette wants to play. So I don't think that's a big problem with them. I mean, they have to have somebody at forward. If they traded Matt Duchesne, their highest paid player would be Colton Sissons.
And like now he likes his.
I do think they think it's a problem.
Okay.
No, they think it's a problem for sure, but at the same time, he has had at least months at a time when he's been effective. Like he has, like as opposed to him, and Johansson has not had that at all, right? So the difference was much harder in Johansson, I believe, because and the other thing about Duchesne is he tends to build up garbage. Like he builds a lot of skeletons in his closet as he goes along with coaches. But whenever he's faced with a new coach, he doesn't have those skeletons yet. And I think that helps him. I think it helps him mentally. Like he definitely seems to be better when he's not playing against the things he's done wrong in the past as much as he is.
Yeah, I think even when he's productive, they don't always like him.
He's been productive, but he's still sometimes a selfish player on the ice. They feel certain things like about his defense they don't like at all. I've heard that too.
I think his general attitude is, it's a pretty complex deal.
Yeah, I get that. So Russ, the draft. Here we go. You guys are all heading to the draft, right? Everybody here is heading to the draft.
Yeah.
Well, except for me. How'd that work out? Anyway. Maybe I shouldn't be running this place anymore. Anyway, I'm not going to the draft, but you guys are all going, and
hot chicken.
Obviously jealous about the whole thing because and the awards are tonight too, which is a great idea. Like let's just throw that out there.
Let me bring up one thing for the awards. Has there been any example in the history of the NHL of a goaltender winning the Vezina and then maybe getting traded in the next week? Because all of a sudden they're talking about Linus Ullmark getting traded from the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point.
Wait a minute, Fleury. What about Fleury?
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to trade him. I mean, that's just a guess, but
But Erik Karlsson's openly talking about getting traded.
Well, speaking of Karlsson,
I'm glad you brought it up.
I wanted to bring that up just because I found that whole interview so enlightening because he basically said, "Go ahead, I'm open-minded. Send me, including Ottawa. I'll go to Ottawa.
I mean, me right now.
It's time. It's time to leave San Jose." He pretty much said. And
he was honest about it.
Yeah, he was, and it was so refreshing. It wasn't like I gotta go to someone contending. He just said, "Bring it on."
It was really important for the Sharks that he had that interview. I'll tell you that because a lot of people since then changed their attitude, like thinking that he wasn't willing to go places, thinking he wasn't.
Well, what GM said the reason they're doing that is because the Sharks are making it really hard in terms of how much money they'll. Retain. So
it's counterproductive. To say I want 2 first-round picks, which was out there before the deadline for him, and to say we're not going to retain. For you to get anything in a deal for Erik Karlsson, no matter how good he is, you probably have to retain at least $4, maybe $5 million of the $11.5 million salary. If you don't, good luck. Let him rot in Northern California for the next 4 years.
Right. I mean, I think you're going
to rot there, Mike.
I heard somebody told me today, a source of mine within the Predators organization, wouldn't it be fun to pick up Erik Karlsson on the draft floor somehow, having all the money they have in the cap and having different situations? Would he be the kind? And this wasn't a rumor as much as it was just somebody there who was saying, "Wouldn't it be fun?"
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. But that deal will have to get made tomorrow because they're not going to have enough time to make that deal on the draft floor with probably the complications of retention and the contract that deal won't come together on the draft floor.
Russ, you know it's going to happen tomorrow because we're all going to be on a plane, and like when we land, like when I land in Atlanta, well, I know. When I land in Atlanta, my phone is going to be ringing off the friggin' hook.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say about the draft, though. I mean, I don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to just be curt about it. But the Matvei Michkov situation is interesting because Frank Saravalli tweeted out that, Montreal is going to interview him. And we kind of knew they would.
Yeah.
But the reason I feel like Montreal's in the lead here, and only because I don't think San Jose will take him, is because they have Nick Bobrov. He used to be with the Rangers. He drafted a lot of Russians with them. He's now co-director of amateur scouting there. He's very influential in Russia. I'm sure Michkov knows of him already, and he's an engaging guy. And so if he talks to Michkov, there's probably a very good likelihood they could sell him on Montreal simply because they've had good luck with Russians. It's a great place to play, and they need a superstar. They still don't have a superstar. Like Suzuki's really good, Cole Caulfield's excellent, but they still don't have a superstar. They could basically sell him that.
Well, Russ, and I know you got to go, but I'll just respond this way. It's clear that with the way Michkov is approaching this, with the sort of the media shutdown in Russia, that he wouldn't talk to certain teams. Now he's talking to them, but he's trying to control where he's going to go. And it may not work.
Sure.
Yeah, it may not work. He may, Montreal may take him no matter what, and some teams will just say, "Screw it, I'm taking him because he's the best player." And I don't know whether it's Washington, but there's a team or teams that he wants to play for, and he's trying to control his destination. And it might work, and it might not work, but I think that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I think Montreal's going to take him too.
I highly suspect it too, and if not, I don't see him getting past Arizona. I think Arizona. They can stash him if he just fine with it.
They can. They really
can stash him until they get to Salt Lake. Yeah.
I heard Arizona and Washington. Like if he gets to Arizona, Washington and Arizona have been talking about something.
So I have no doubt of it. Yeah, they'll try.
If he gets to Arizona, I could definitely see the Capitals making that.
I do think Philly. There's a decent. I think if he gets to 7, there's a possibility.
He's not getting by 8. 8 is the lowest.
I think 8 to me. If he gets past 8, 8 will. If he gets past 8, it would completely drop my jaw.
No, he won't. He won't get past 8. I think that's true. And I do think there's a chance Philly would take him. I just don't think he'll get there. But the other big thing is I think Bill Armstrong was right. And the more I talked around is nobody's trading out of the top 10. Nobody. Now,
I think it's going to be difficult. Yeah, exactly. No team that's in the top 10 is going to trade down.
Right. You can see somebody trading up to San Jose, like 8-4, and they
within that box.
Even that's going to cost a lot, but that's possible. But it's just not likely.
It just doesn't happen too. Like, and someone gave me 2 examples, the DeBrincat, but I say those aren't examples because that was a case of they had someone to trade and they got a pick back that allowed them to get inside the 10. That wasn't a case of somebody trying to trade up by enticing you with a pick. So the only thing, what generally happens is you do see trades, and Russ knows this too. Guys go from 20 to 17 or 15 to 13. That where it's one specific guy. It's not a big deal. It's just 2 picks. Yeah, but I never believed anybody was getting inside the 10.
Like the Flyers could trade, their 22nd pick for 2 seconds. Like those kinds of things could happen, will happen. Day 2, there'll be a lot of trading.
I think they want to keep 20. I think the goal is they want to keep 22.
I know, but I'm just saying,
and add one at the back end. I see them holding. Yeah,
I don't even think those trades happen very much because people don't want to, give up like 22. Don't want to give up 2 second-round picks. It's not like the NFL.
There are teams that have like 3 and 4, so you never know.
Yeah, but the Red Wings have 3, and they're adamant. They don't want to. I think they'll give up 1, but they wouldn't give up 2. There's no.
That's the only way that Philly would probably even consider trading down from that spot. Anyhow,
do you think Yzerman
would have Venmo money? This is what I got to know.
Do you think Yzerman would trade 2 of those seconds to get up to the late part of the first round?
Maybe, he might do that, but I don't think people will do that. So but his picks are right in a row. Like he said, he wonders if that has ever happened. And I don't know. I bet it hasn't. 3 in a row.
It's happened for the Bruins in the first round.
Remember that?
No.
Was it 3 consecutive?
It was.
Okay, I was thinking it was 3 and 4.
14,
Okay.
I think it's 14, 15. Yep. Zaboro, Senyshyn, and DeBrusque. 3
trust me, if you follow my Twitter feed, you'll see a picture of me and Shane Malloy interviewing all those 3 guys at the same time on Sirius. So,
and only one of them was relevant. Oh.
Only one of them, yeah.
It was on Bruins TV too. That's how I remember. But no, as far as anything else with the draft, I mean, I don't think there'll be huge surprises in the top 3 or 4 picks. Look, if Carlson were to go second, I wouldn't jump out of my seat. And if something like that happened, Mitch Kopp went second, I wouldn't jump out of my seat. It's just I don't think there's going to be anything like what happened with Shane Wright, where we were legit surprised, even though we were hearing murmurs about it. I don't think it'll be anything like that. But I do think in the second day, though, there will be a lot of action. I don't think all these teams are taking all those picks.
I still love the buzz in the building last year when Slafkovsky was picked. And it was,
I know that's a crazy feeling. I mean, the Bruins, I was just texted, are trying to get cap space all of a sudden.
There we go.
Of course they are, but I mean,
they're trying to sign Bertuzzi.
Yeah. So they're trying to get cap space. They're trying to get Bertuzzi in, but it's like there's other. Yeah, that's gonna
be. They could buy out Mike Riley. They could trade Grzelcyk. There's options for them. So that
all right, I'll see you guys in there.
Take care of us.
Bye.
So everybody's traveling tomorrow, I think, right? So
yes.
Are you traveling tomorrow too, Kevin?
I am.
Okay,
I'm driving though. I don't have that Hockey Buzz money, so.
Neither do I, Kev. I'm here. I obviously don't have the Hockey Buzz money. Anyway, So, what I might do is put a show together for you guys tomorrow to get Q&A just with the chat room or something like that. Because if things are going really well or things are happening or starting to happen, just keep an eye out. I'll put it in my blog that I'm doing it. If I do it, it'll be last second.
And I would say we'd probably shoot for like a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock Eastern
Wednesday.
Show on Wednesday because there's
after you guys can do it. I'll be there because you guys are the important people.
Yeah, I'll plot out the time, and tweet it out and let everybody know.
Okay, cool. All right. So just remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We are getting close to the draft, and man, the UFA day is only a couple days away. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.